come on, everybody, come on, everybody.
I'm a rapper, I'm not a poet. Poet, I'm not a rapper. Guess it's opposite there, cause you niggas just got it backwards. Got me sick to my stomach. Go up on my lantern. New trio is Frio, the most terrible tandem. Deliver shock value, but no, not Timberlanding. Critical observation alerting you ambulances. Clap on and clap off. Rap on and rap off. Hard times for hard rhymes, that concrete, that asphalt. If I did look twice, I guess that's her asphalt. May I assist you and score, get my pass out. Matter of fact, it's what you need. Need some rest, you just fatigued. See, technically I'm foul, Mrs. Wallace, I'm Rashid. Know this beat is a banger, have no reason for anger. If I'm slightly deterred, you know I'm giving the finger. I'm a savage like Corey, but not in need of Topanga. Right like 90 degrees, you in the need of an angle.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This is your boy Tight, and I got my boy BG with me. What's going on, BG?
And now, what's happening? Free Lunch Podcast. What's going on, Tight?
Man, I'm happy to have us another opportunity to bless this mic. What about yourself?
Yes, indeed. I always love this time, man, getting a chance to deliver more Free Lunch Podcast. What you feeling like today?
This gonna be a heavy topic.
Heavy?
I think so, man. I think it's one that you and I have kind of discussed and kind of talk about just between ourselves and our small circles. But I think having the courage to kind of bring it to the forefront is gonna kind of and even personalize it a little bit. This might be a heavy one.
Okay. Well, we got to do some heavy sometimes, man, and I think it's beneficial to the people when we go to this level. So I'm ready for it.
You ready for it? So I'm
Yes,
not even.
sir.
I'm. It's gonna be less joking and more serious, but I do think the people are interested in the progress of the garden that you put out there, the Holy Garden of Selma.
The Holy Garden, the community garden. Well, they are sprouting. The turnips that I spoke about a few podcasts ago are sprouting. I actually be updating it on Instagram, man. So I'm tracking the progress of my crops on Instagram. So it's going good. It's a real good process. I got a coworker that's real heavy into gardening and farming and raising animals and stuff. And so, it really sparked my interest, when you start talking about self-sufficiency and being able to dictate what you eat, what you put into your system. And there's no better way than to have your own garden, using your own vegetables and things of that nature. So it's a good process to see how it takes place, put it in the ground. And, one day you can take it out of the ground and put it on your dinner plate. So it's a pretty rewarding thing. And I'm glad to have been afforded the opportunity to finally get a garden started. So it's going good, man. Going real good.
I don't know if you've been following or keeping up with the show with the sitcom Black Jesus, but this
Yeah, man. Every
episode,
Thursday.
episode 10 was kind of made me think about your garden. So for those of you that have been keeping up with it, if you really go back and just follow each and every Thursday the progress that's being made and all those things, I really believe that it'll really have some make a lot of sense with what's going on.
Right.
So with that being said, you ready?
It's time.
Should I? So we just got started, and I actually just had some company walk in. Should I put them on the mic or just keep it going?
If they're willing to get on mic, this is the Free Lunch Podcast. I think that'll exemplify that this is a podcast of the people.
It's a podcast of the people, for the people.
For the people, by the people, with the people.
Let me just, because they can't really hear what we talking about. But essentially, what we about to talk about is this topic on enemy of the state, and really the value of the black man in America. But I won't put them on the mic because they seem like they done got a little shy.
Okay, well, don't do it to them.
I ain't gonna do it to them, but I think it's about that time.
Let's do it.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on.
What's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on?
Dog, you really have. This is really going to be a real mellow show. You went Marvin Gaye. What's going on?
I had to
Oh
go
yeah,
Marvin
we
Gaye.
really got to have a serious tone on this one.
So essentially, what we're going to talk about is enemy of the state, and I kind of introduced it when I was explaining it to the guests that walked in. But essentially, can you just give some background as to the topic, and actually one of the blog topics that you wrote about with enemy of the state, and we can kind of use that as our background and our layout for today's topic.
So the Enemy of the State blog, I wrote that blog, and it was right around the time of the whole incident in Ferguson, Missouri, with the young teenager Michael Brown being shot down basically by a city police officer, and all of the controversy that surrounded that situation. Kid gets shot 6 times reportedly, lays in the street for 4 hours with no appropriate care, nobody making any efforts to get emergency medical services to his aid or anything like that. And so that just really sparked the thought in 2014 of how America views the African American male based off of the news coverage that surrounded that particular incident, the opinions that came out. You had opinions from both sides. You had those representing the young man and how his murder was unjust, and people standing up against excessive police force, police brutality. And then in converse to that, you've had a sect of people that were supporting the police, stating that it was good police work and things of that nature. To me personally, it seemed excessive. So in writing that piece, it was really just kind of getting into what goes on in a person's mind, be it a police officer, to where you're armed, the other person is not armed, young kid, whatever happens, how do you go from confronting this kid to shooting him 6 times and killing him, and then not even showing any type of remorse at that moment? No type of, okay, well, this in the name of good police work, I'm going to make sure that I do everything that I can to make sure that this kid does not die. And
but even on top of the Ferguson case, you actually outlined and laid out several.
Well, that was and that was just the start of it, and then and then you had all of these these other situations that really, I guess, mimic that particular situation. You had this situation with Ezell Ford. You had Eric Gardner in the New York, New Jersey area. Jonathan Farrell, Renisha McBride. All instances to where people of African American descent, Black Americans, were unrightfully gunned down and murdered for no valid or rational reason. So that spoke to that. And then the connecting point in terms of value was that, and I stated it kind of in the blog, that about 10 days after the whole incident with Michael Brown, we had the incident with James Foley, the journalist that was beheaded in Syria by ISIS. And the tone was so different. On his one hand, the kid in Ferguson, you've got a debate on whether he died a rifle death or whether he was straight out murdered. But then on the flip side, when it came down to the James Foley situation, it was pro James Foley. It was pro James Foley, completely anti ISIS. But if you look at both of them, removing all of the surrounding things, the surrounding opinions, they were both acts of terrorism in my eyes. But there was so much more value in terms of public opinion in the press. There was so much more value given to the James Foley situation than it was to the Mike Brown situation. So from that kind of grew that whole piece that I wrote in terms of just a debate on being an enemy of the state, how people decide who their enemies are and who they're going to side with. And no matter what happens, right or wrong, those people are going to side with the people that they view that reflect them or represent them or what they would consider a hero. They're going to be on that person's side and going to ride with them regardless before they stand up for someone who they may view as an enemy or view as their life not being as valuable as the next man.
So Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Ezell Ford, James Foley, Dante Parker, Jonathan Farrell, Renisha McBride, Oscar Grant, Kajimi Powell, Trayvon Martin. All those are names and individuals that essentially were murdered or shot down by a police officer or by another citizen that was quote unquote standing their ground. But the one common thing is all of them were of African American descent.
Correct. Except for James Foley. James Foley was the journalist that I just spoke about.
Oh, right. Except for James Foley, who was the journalist. Mm-hmm. And so in a lot of instances, and based off of your piece, you did a comparison between James Foley and those individuals and the response as to how America responded for each and every one of those situations.
Right.
And
I was just gonna add, to that. It was just the whole thing about, people, you find if you read some of the comments, say like on some of the articles that are posted on the web, and you see some of the people's comments on the article, people making statements like basically saying that those people, whatever those people were doing, they deserve to be murdered or deserve to be killed. And that just really touched me in a certain kind of way. And it really taps into what we're talking about is how individuals value Black Americans, especially Black males, to even state that if something happens to me, I'm tending to my business. Mm-hmm. I'm not bothering anybody, but somebody feels that I'm infringing upon their space. They do something to me. They're justified in doing that.
I do kind of want to touch on that, and later on in the podcast, I hate the word devil's advocate, but I do want to provide a perspective from the officer's perspective and answer the question, because I've heard this as a debate as far as police officers are threatened by Black males,
right?
And so as essentially saying that it's self-defense, right? Because they're threatened. Because I do kind of want to table that topic. I don't want to kind of discuss it now, but I do want to table that and kind
Let's
table that, and I want to get back to it. But to your point, let's kind of focus on America's viewpoint on Black males and even personalize it, right? With personal experiences that you and I have had, because I'm a Black male. And I've had experiences where I've been engaged with police officers, and I can just tell by their tone that from talking with different police officers, and I can give you story after story after story of how they even approach an African American male, me, and are kind of disrespectful from the standpoint to where once they realize that you have some type of vocabulary and you can articulate your words, then they change their entire tone.
Correct.
So, but from the face value, just from initial introduction, it's kind of nasty the way that they kind of talk to me, and I've been experienced. I mean, I can give you an example of just being on campus, right? At a school that I love and I endure, but being pulled over by a police officer and essentially just harassed, because I was driving. I mean, no ticket was cited. I was eventually let go and told I can drive off, but just because driving while black.
Yeah, and I got stopped. I got stopped. I've told this story a couple of times to a few friends, but I was coming through Mississippi from New Orleans. I was driving a rental car. It was a 626. That was probably a 626 with some shiny wheels. So that was probably my first mistake. I should have went with that Oldsmobile they tried to give me, but I wanted to ride in style. But anyway, coming back from New Orleans. Coming down 2059, I got one ticket by the State Patrol, Mississippi State Patrol. It was legitimate. I was speeding. But about 15, 20 minutes later, I'm riding down the interstate. I'm cautious of my speed. And then I see this group of sheriffs in the median. They're just standing around. They got their vehicles parked. They're just standing around talking. So, of course, naturally, I've already gotten one ticket. I break speed. Okay, so I'm riding down the highway, and about 5 minutes after passing them, I see this SUV, one of the SUVs that was in that median behind me. So, I'm making sure that I got two hands on the wheel. I ain't speeding. I ain't texting or doing any of that.
You making a conscious effort to be a law-abiding citizen.
To be a law-abiding citizen, because I ain't no way in the hell I'm finna get 2 tickets in less than 20 minutes. So go down the road a little bit further, the lights come on. And I'm like, I don't believe this. So I'm in Mississippi. Thank the Lord it was daytime. I pull over. He come to the car. And he just basically started asking questions. One of the questions, the car had a cigarette smell in it from whoever was driving in the car before that. So you smoking in the car? I'm like, no, this is a rental car. Whoever had it before me smoking. I had the ticket on the side of on the passenger side of the seat. His question to me is, so you already got one ticket? I'm like, yeah, I got that ticket back down the road. I'm trying to keep my cool. But he's asking all these questions. And so this is the part where we have to be careful. So as he's going along this, I'm getting more and more frustrated. And I remember seeing him in the median. And so I say to him, y'all must be looking for somebody. This is where we got to be careful. I say that to him, and he say, you know what? We're looking for you. Get out the car. So no protocol, because he's on the passenger side. He's on the passenger side window talking in to me. He tells me to get out the car. He turns his back and is walking to the car. Now, that can't be protocol because he basically has endangered himself, because if I had a weapon or something like that, he would have been messed up because he's already turned his back to me, which lets me further know that the way that he was either new or he was just operating off of just some more regular stuff. Right? So, but, he goes on, he runs a number, and I'm debating. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in Mississippi. I can't go to jail because I don't know what might happen down here. So I just get out of the car. He run the number, give me a ticket, I go on about my merry way. But just that instance really showed me how quick it can go from a person doing their job as a civil servant to being just on some regular person stuff. Because the dialogue that we was having was not me talking to a public servant. It was just like me talking to just an average old dude that's harassing me. And I kind of responded that way, which is very dangerous.
In that situation, why did he give you a ticket in that situation?
Well, basically, I think it was a lot of different factors. One of the factors was that I was in that rental car. The second factor was that I broke, I brought attention to myself. But probably the more important thing was that he was able to see that I was a black male riding, and none of that stuff matched up. I'm a black male riding in a rental car, and I think that car had a Florida tag or something like that. So it really made me a marked person.
But what I was
coming
saying
through that
what
particular
was-
territory.
What was the citation? What was the citation?
I think he gave me something like riding on the median or something. Something wild.
Gotcha. And like I said, I can go on and on and on with different stories because like I say, I've been pulled over plenty of times, but during those times, I'm quick to, I try to limit the conversation because I feel like if I continue to answer questions or get into a verbal communication between myself and the officer, then he'll try to antagonize me and try to look for a reason to give me a ticket or what have you. So I try to limit my conversation. But, I've been in situations where, I've asked the officer, he asked me for my identification, etc. So I asked him for his badge number. And the moment you do that, then they really feel like they are a authoritative figure, and I don't even have the right or the audacity to ask for their badge number.
Right.
And a lot of times the reason I do that is simply because I'm trying to cover myself in the event that it escalates and something gets out of hand. I want to be able to have the name and identification of the person or the individual that's stopping me.
And rightfully so. That really should be no issue for that to be given to you. It shouldn't be no issue.
Right.
But like you say, it comes off as questioning their authority, and some officers are just like everyday people walking around with a chip on their shoulder, and so any little thing that you do that they don't like, they gonna respond to it.
But I kind of want to take this conversation here, and it's kind of the reason why I brought it up. It's interesting because as a child, you're taught that the police officer is here to serve and protect. But as you get older, especially growing up as a black male in America, as you get older, it's interesting how that mindset and that philosophy changes from, seeing an officer here to serve and protect to seeing an officer in a lot of ways harassing and interrogating you.
It could be said that it's to serve and protect certain people, because you got to remember that they're policemen, but at the end of the day, there are people that are coming, like we talked about, coming in with their own set of beliefs and values, right? And some of them of not the community, don't come from the community, so they lack that sensitivity. And so it takes a great police officer, it takes a great person first and foremost, but it takes a great police officer to see past your own personal beliefs and not let those things get in the way of you doing your job. But because of how they feel and their beliefs, and then some of this other stuff that we're going to talk about, it puts them in a situation to where they operate from the same things that a non-police officer would act from. They don't use the aggression that great police officers use. They don't use that type of discretion. A lot of officers are just operating like average everyday Joes with uniforms on, which is not really the expectation that we have, because we expect them to do kind of like a preacher does, kind of be on another level, to be able to, exceed a certain level and not operate like we operate. We expect them to do things in a superior way, but that's just not the way that it's playing out, especially as it relates to police officers of different ethnicities being or serving in communities that are predominantly black.
But think about that though. When we were younger, or for me anyway, my perception of a police officer was just that, to serve and protect. And this was before any type of negative thought of, I mean, I was innocent as a child, right? You're innocent. You have no preformed notions, and you're raised to with the idea of what a firefighter does and the police is the good guy. But at what point as a young African American male does that idea and that belief kind of transform? You know, and I'm not saying it does for all males, but in my case, it's interesting because I'm pretty sure in a lot of situations you would be reluctant to even dial a police and have a police come out to do what you would consider to be serve and protect. I mean, I can give you a perfect example where I had a car accident and the police officer pretty much told me, "Why are you calling me out here? You know, we don't deal with that." Well, then, if I can't even call you out here to help me with a car accident, which is something that I would think that a police officer would have come out and give a non-biased police report on in the event I have to go to court, and his response is, "Why are you calling me?" Then the next time I'm in any situation, do I want to call the police? A group of people that, you know, as a child, I'm told to serve and protect, or if I'm getting pulled over by the police and then I'm being let go and not given any type of citation, but simply being pulled over for whatever reason he may want to tell me. You see what I'm saying? Like the mindset now of black males can almost be as though, you know, at what point is the police officer trying to help? And I'm not saying all police officers, because I'm sure there are some good ones. My personal experiences is, if I've met one that I felt like has tried to help me, I don't remember. But my instances have not been positive images. And that just me trying to be transparent and as frank as possible. You know, I would love to ask a 5-year-old African American boy, what is his experience? What does he think about police? And see if he thinks the way that I thought back in the early 80s when I grew up, thinking that they were here to serve and protect. Or would he have a different perception based off of what he's seen with Trayvon Martin, what he's seen in Ferguson, what he's seen with Eric Gardner, and all these different stories that have been played out on the media? You know, what does the young black male in today, and then also just growing up in an era where there's more transparency, what does he think now of the police officer?
A lot of what we experience, what you're talking about as youngsters, is in line with the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and all those kind of things. It's like we told these things. We told that the world is a perfect place. We told that the government is for you. I can remember being in second grade, and I believe it was right around the time that George Bush 1 was running for the presidency, and you know the teacher had us making banners and stuff like that. Like George Bush was the man. I can remember the same thing for Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was king in our eyes. We know in elementary school, Ronald Reagan was the best thing since God, almost, in terms of the way that it was reflected to us. But now, be it that you become informed and enlightened, you see really what was going on, really what Ronald Reagan meant for the country, really see the work that he actually did, and how his service especially to our community was detrimental. So you get it's society brainwashing you to believe that all these things are okay. And it is not until you get to the point of being enlightened or being made aware of what's really going on that the light goes off, and it's like, well, the things that y'all told me when I was 5 or 6 ain't really what it is. So to answer your question, I think it's a growth process, and it's just a moment when you become face to face with reality. And I think that young people, like I say, if good parenting is going on, are using all of these things as teachable moments to prepare their children for the real world, because really what we're seeing that's coming out, and we're getting heavy doses of it because we more so technologically connected. News travels faster. What we're seeing now is just an outpour of things that have been lying under the surface for a long period of time.
I would agree
It's
with that.
it's been going on, and I'm talking about decades upon generations of this whole thought, of this whole view and value of the African American soul that's reflecting itself in real time on YouTube, on the news, on Facebook, on Instagram. So now it's just hitting us in the face on a day-to-day basis, but it's really been there all the time.
I mean, and it's interesting because you can go on YouTube and find video after video of a black male being harassed and literally being. I mean, I've seen their YouTube videos where the guy that was in Louisiana, where a police officer basically went into his house without any type of consent and basically got on top of him, and the guy kept saying, "Sir, what have I done?" and asking him simple question with his hands raised up. But it got so scary to the point to where it looked like the officer almost was about to pull out his pistol and shoot the guy. That's how scary it got. And when you're seeing those type of images on the news, and to your point, these have been things that have been happening probably for decades, but now that we have the platform such as YouTube and these different media outlets that expose it, that's scary. The reality that many black males are facing today. You know, even with yourself having a doctorate degree, you know, and having to be harassed or pulled over for minor things that may have should not have even escalated to where they escalated to. Or for me, someone that has both an engineering degree as well as a master's degree, be pulled over or be talked to in a tone or in a way, simply because you want to know more information about the particular officer that's pulling you over. You know, and that's coming from two individuals that are consistently try to do the right thing and consistently try to find ways to be mentors and to be examples. So in a lot of instances, to me, I think what needs to happen is the police really needs to do a self-evaluation of the tactics that they are using, and really try to really try to stop using these archaic methods, because in a lot of ways what they're doing is archaic, and it's just not right.
It's not right. And you know, the thing about this, and that's why we really have to stay on it and make sure that the lost souls don't just go forgotten and nothing changes on the back end of what happened to them. We have to make sure locally that our municipalities adopt some of the more up-to-date methods in terms of interacting with people, interacting with the community, and how you approach situations. If it's a situation that might be shaky, you might be running up on somebody that's an alleged suspect or something. There should be a way that you, and I'm sure it's in the training, that you approach that situation without thinking, shoot first. You are able to assess the situation. For example, like the other guy that they said had some psych disorder or something, that in Missouri, not too far from the crime, Michael Brown crime scene, the guy that it was robbing the store, and they say he had a knife, and they called the police, and he was walking around outside and put whatever he had stolen down, and the police had an opportunity to know what the suspect was doing, what he had done. They were able to ride around the corner. They were able to visualize the suspect. And the first thing they do they get out of the car with their weapons drawn. Now, before they even sit in the car and assess the situation or anything like that, they jump out with their guns drawn. So you already know that they on edge and itching itching to pull the trigger. So, you know, all those type of things have to be taken into consideration, and our police officers, the people that are put there to protect and serve the whole community, need to use more discretion like we all do in our professional settings and handle situations as they are called to be handled.
Right.
You know? And I think that's not a far-fetched expectation to have for our city government employees, people that our tax dollars go to pay their salaries.
Well, two things I kind of want to do before we wrap up, because we talked about this and we've personalized it, but I kind of want to go back to that idea of what I tabled, and then lastly, kind of provide, I mean, for what it's worth, you know, just some, maybe a list of things that black males should consider doing if they are pulled over, or if they are, you know, being harassed by a particular police officer, or things that we can do as a community to make certain that we're going to the polls and we're voting to let the appropriate police chiefs and the appropriate officers that to be held accountable for these officers that are not living by a particular standard. But I mean, you made an interesting point earlier when you kind of talked about the police officers coming out and, you know, before even assessing the situation, pretty much coming out with guns drawn. What about this idea or this notion that the police officers are kind of threatened by black males? You know, you read the stories about the multiple shootings and killings in Chicago, or, you know, Louisiana being this capital for murders. What about an officer that works in those cities or in that state, or just in general, that feels threatened by the black male?
True. And then that'll definitely tie into what we talk about our responsibilities and how we, you know, our role in improving this particular dilemma. But yeah, I mean, now in some places, in some cities, in some areas, police are taking heat. Like, you know, they get into straight shootouts with civilians. So naturally, they have to be, you know, ready to defend themselves. Their lives are on the line. And I don't have any problem with that. You go into a hostile situation, you're trying to calm that situation down, but you might have to do some things to get it calm. That's a part of your job. I'm all about that. And that does speak for across the board. Police, you know, police is a united organization from state to state, city to city. And so when there are these things going on in another part of the country, of course, it's raising the attention of officers in other places. And so they're naturally going to be on guard as well. So there is some legitimacy to an officer being ready to protect himself, right, going into these hostile situations. And there's ground for that. I don't think most people have a problem with that. I definitely don't. And I can understand how you could be on. It's like a soldier. It's like you going into battle. You got to be ready.
Right.
You definitely got to be ready. And you might go into a situation where there's a mixture of innocent civilians and they're mixed in with suspects. And you've got to use your best judgment to determine who's who. I think we all get that.
We all get that, but I guess what we're saying in these situations where you have officers that are essentially not even assessing the situation, they're going in with the intent. It's almost like their first reaction is to withdraw their weapon and to essentially shoot first, ask second.
Yeah. So it seems like in all of these situations, it was the police versus one individual. It wasn't like they were going into this large crowd and had to pick somebody off. It's the police versus one individual, you know. So to me, it's a little bit different. And whenever given an opportunity to be able to, like you say, assess the situation and use your discretion, you should definitely do that and not roll up with the intent to shoot first.
I think we're at a vital time with the black male's perception or perspective of a police officer and the perception, and with with police officers. I think this is a critical time because I think with the media outlets and the different platforms, I think you now have a generation of young black men that are seeing images of police, and they are essentially developing a mindset and developing a thought that the police really isn't there to serve and protect them. And I think that we really need to, number one, educate our communities on, and really in a lot of instances, I mean, okay, perfect example. The black police officer that was in Ferguson, he was out there talking to those people, and because he had a relationship with a lot of the young folks in that community and a lot of the leaders, he was able to prevent a lot of the uprise from happening. The problem is when you have these other individuals or these white police officers that go into these communities that have no relationship with these community leaders, or have no relationship with these schools, or with these parents and these children, and then they go in and essentially try to become a dictator and not figure out ways to work with the community. And until these police officers are able to, number one, hire and promote African Americans into positions to develop a relationship in these communities with these people, have officers, African American officers, develop a relationship, we at a real critical time right now, because the perception of the police officer can really be damaged if we continue along the lines that we've seen in the past year and a half or so.
Yeah, and there are great police officers out there. My roommate from college is a police officer, and I have a great number of friends that are policemen and work in that capacity. And you talked about perception in terms of how how African American youth, African American males are now being forced to really analyze how they see police officers. And we talk about this, and I always got to bring this point, but there's a historical and sociological element to how all this plays into this thing that we're talking about. And so you look at, there's this thing, and people have termed it as, say, like white fear. Basically, white fear of the black man, and it's historical to the degree, if you think about just in old Europe, way back, if you think about Shakespeare in Othello, you refer to Othello as the Moor. So when the Europeans came in and basically did what they did to African culture and African civilization, they created this thing of superiority and inferiority, and naturally they acclaimed the superior position over people of color, over Africans. And so that's the old world. And when you look at that, European influence has touched basically every continent in the world, infusing their belief and their thoughts. So that's why globally people view black people as second class and inferior globally. All these different places, no matter where you go, the African American is already, or the black person, period, a person of African descent, whether they come from Africa or come from Cuba, if you got that brown or black skin, you already are looked down upon. And so that's now embedded into our country. That's embedded into America. Slavery.
You made a good point though. Is you actually? I saw this one of the quotes that you put out there. Has black become the new face of crime?
It's always been the face of crime after the Civil War, right? And you got Reconstruction. Reconstruction was a time where when the Union came in, black people had voting abilities. Black people held positions in the government and all this kind of stuff. And the propaganda that came out was that the African American was a beast. The African American, the black man was set out to rape all the women. He had no conscience. He couldn't think. He just ate watermelon, laughed, and drunk himself to death. Was the propaganda that was put out on what a black person was. The women were hypersexed. All they wanted to do was have sex. That's why the slave owners wanted to jump a black woman's bones, because that's the way that they saw us. So this is historical. Now that's embedded in our country's DNA. Our forefathers saw us that way. The Constitution saw us that way. You know, you had the 3/5, where it was more so about how votes were delegated to states based off of their population, and they had to figure out how they were going to account for the black population in the states and how that was going to play into who had the electoral votes. And they had to come up with 3/5, you know, and the black person didn't even have a vote. So this is in our history. This is in our country's history. This is in our society. So you've got to know that when people that don't come from our community look at us, they're looking at us through the lens of their great-grandparents. You know, they're looking at us through that lens. And so their expectation for us is still those same things. And so we're the easy pen for when stuff goes bad. Now you talk about crime. And America was built on crime, because you look at a lot of the families that have a lot of the wealth and all these type of things now. A lot of that money was built on the mob, the different mobsters in different areas. Chicago has always been bad, but it was the mobsters in Chicago back in the 20s and the 30s and things like that. But, you know, if you let the wrong person tell it, those things, that period is glorified. That's when America got its footing. That's when America really took off as its power. But when you look at it, a lot of it was built on criminal basis. But now here we go, fast forward, and we're all a little bit more hip to it. Pin everything bad on the black person, because that's what we expect them to do anyway. And so what our people are doing in like a Chicago, or just emulating what that particular city's culture has taught them. They're emulating the history that was laid down by Italian mob, which is what we did. We just seeing it replayed again, and it's just affecting our community. We're doing what we saw somebody else do, and now we getting blamed for everything, while everybody else can go on and live this perfect fantasy life. But everything bad is associated with our community, and it's just the history and the sociology behind it that's put us in that position.
So, but essentially, when that police officer, when he's coming out having that gun already drawn, he's essentially subconsciously seeing a black face and essentially saying that's a crime face.
That's a crime face. That ain't no person. That's somebody that's doing something wrong somewhere, somehow. He doing something he ain't got no business. That's how they approach it.
I'm gonna shoot first and ask questions, but
ask questions later. Because I'll be justified. Nobody will say anything. Nobody will really make an issue of this whole thing. People will write it off as good police work.
Because if you look at every situation, out of those names that we talked about, you know, the question then would be how many of them have even been, how many of the police officers or the shooters, how many of the, you know, in Trayvon Martin's case or what have you, how many of them have even been found guilty? Because even at the Ferguson case, we recording this months later, and that police officer still hadn't even been arrested.
Can't find him.
He haven't even been arrested or asked to be arrested because, because what he did in their eyes was justified, and that's basically saying that the value of an African American male, it's okay to shoot an African American male because he's the face of crime.
And you'll also hear it justified with, well, what about the blacks shooting blacks? How you expect us to value a black life when black people don't respect other black life, which is a foolish argument in itself. But that's just another thing that shows how much we are devalued to say something as simple minded as that.
That's true. So before let's go ahead and get up out of here. But I do want to give a few things as far as some different methods, I guess. I'm not saying that these are the right methods, but just some things that we should do as a community to really go out and try to change the perception of how police officers are treating African American males. I mentioned one of them earlier about going to the polls and voting, but really, holding these police officers accountable. These police officers are being elected in some instances majority black population, and they have no type of connection to the community. So how do we need to be more aware of who are these elected officials and go out there. We need to make our voice be heard. I mean, I don't know if you want to say anything else before I go to another topic.
Yeah, I'll say something on that. The election process is very important, and it's something that we have to become more engaged in on other levels besides just the presidency of the United States. You got to really be involved in your local, city, and state government. I'm becoming more hip to that because those things play a valuable role. Positions like, your city council members play a role in determining who's going to be your police chief. So you've got to take an interest even on your city council level. In Ferguson, I think they might have eight seats or something like that with the mayor included. So a mayor and 7 councilmen. And I think only 1 councilman might have been maybe black or something thereof. So if your city council doesn't reflect your city, and Ferguson is a predominantly black city, much like Selma, my hometown, same thing. And so if your city council doesn't reflect your demographic, then you can pretty well bet that in those important positions, your police chief and all of those type of things, they're not going to reflect you either. And there goes your sensitivity when it comes down to how that person deals with our youth, how that person deals with us, or how they instruct their officers to deal with us on routine police stops or routine patrols. So you have to be involved on that level to get people with a vested interest in those positions so that when it comes time to make decisions, that those decisions are in the best interest of the people in that community.
That's true.
And that's it.
But also on top of that, you have to stop waiting. You have to stop waiting till after the fact before you have a voice. You got to hold these police officers and these elected officials accountable before something bad happens. I think a lot of the times, you'll get the parent that wants to go have the parent teacher conference when they see the F on the report card. Well, have those parent teacher conferences during the school year and there won't be a F on the report card. So the same thing applies here. When you have these elected officials, make your voice heard. Hold them accountable for what's being done and what's not being done. I mean, even in the situations where you're having the black on black crime, go to the police officers and say, hey, we need more officers patrolling the area, or we need lighting out in this area. It's always dark. But when you ride around into the other communities, they always getting the new lighting fixtures and it's bright and you can see. You got to be proactive and hold these elected city officials as well as these police officers accountable on the front end, such that you don't have situations like you're having in Ferguson. And when you do have them, then it'll be obvious that that particular officer or whomever was 100% in the wrong, because you would have exposed these officers that are getting elected, that are getting hired and going through these police academies. You would have known their history. That's another thing. Learn the history of the person that's getting elected. Who are not getting elected, but these going to these police academies. Who are these officers? What are their history? What have they done? What organizations are they affiliated with?
And these are questions that you can. These are questions that you really can ask and get information of. And you said it. I think you accidentally said, but the same thing for your elected officials. When these people are running for these particular offices in your city and in your state, do some research on them. If you see them, ask them questions and things like that and get the best read on them that you possibly can. Don't take it for granted, because if you take it for granted, it can definitely hurt you and your children and your community in the long run if you don't have a vested interest. You got to really care about it, because if you don't care about it, as we see, nobody else will care about it.
So do those things. But then secondly, educate these young African American males. I mentor several young African American males, and I come up with different, I give them my personal opinion on what I think they should do. I like to, whenever I get pulled over nowadays, I like to record the conversation in a lot of ways, and I like to have my phone and record it because I want to be able to protect myself, and I want to be able to have just as much evidence as he has, because in a lot of those situations, it's he say, she say, or he say. So rather than put myself in that situation, a lot of these smartphones have voice recorders and all those sort of things. So I like to record the conversation so that in the event I need to utilize that recorded message, I have that available. So it's not a misunderstanding of what was said.
Use your technology, use all your resources to cover yourself. And we do have to have a protocol, and we can fight the fight about, well, we shouldn't have to do all these extra things and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just a firm believer that it's better to do these extra things, like you say, to cover yourself. Even though it might seem to be extra, it might seem stupid and not make any sense, but it behooves you to do those things so that just in case something goes down, you got everything that you need to document what has happened. Do it respectfully. Don't, just do what you need to do respectfully. Answer the questions. Keep it short, and let it do what it's gonna do.
I take my phone, I put it in the door handle, and I just hit record, and I don't say anything. I limit the conversation, and I ask whatever they need from me. I provide it to them, no questions. I let them know, hey, if I need to go into the glove compartment, it's in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach in there. Is that okay? But like I said earlier, I'm not trying to be sassy with it, or I'm just trying to cover myself. And like I say, I put it in the doorknob, and I just say, and I just hit record, and I just let everything that's said be recorded. So those are just some of the things that I do, and I try to do to protect myself, because until I have more confidence in the police department, then I have to do what's best for me, so that I can have faith in the process
And protect yourself at all costs. You protect yourself. If you in a dispute with the police officer, you probably gonna be outmanned sooner than later. So as opposed to trying to have a street fight or something like that, you just gotta take whatever L is gonna be and live to fight another day. Don't get into no true altercation with the police because you're outmanned, and the cards are definitely stacked against you. So you want to use some common sense and just take a loss if you got to. And then, you know, if you've got everything documented, you can fight it on the back end, but don't get into a street fight or a shootout with the police, because you know, chances are you probably gonna lose that one.
All right, that's all I got on the topic.
That's all I got. That's a good one. So hopefully that was informative. We talked a lot, shared a lot, but hopefully that'll help frame this whole picture and what we're dealing with from this point forward, and use these incidences as teachable moments and not just let them be lost to just the emotional the emotional out or emotional output, and then let that be the end of it. So hopefully we can draw something that'll help us down the road.
We have a large female audience, and my prayer is that you share this podcast with young African American males that you know, and you have that conversation and let them know how to respond or what to do in the event you are faced with a police officer. I think it's important to have these dialogues on the front end versus on the latter end. So my ask, I guess, to the female audience is to have the conversations with your sons, with your nephews, with the young men that you see on a daily basis, and talk to them and encourage them to do the right thing. But at the same time, if they are encountered by a police officer, be able to protect yourself and respond in a way that is going to be safe for both you and the officer. Because I'm not suggesting in no way that all officers are targeting black males, but at the same time, make certain you're aware of how to handle and how to speak to the police officer, and utilize the technology you have in the event that a police officer tries to harass or harm you. So that's all I got.
All good. Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast or have something that you want to say to us, give us some feedback, give us some criticisms. We welcome all that. You can reach out to us, freelunchpodcast.blogspot.com. That's where we post our blogs and these podcasts. So check us out there. You can also reach us on Twitter, FreelunchPodC, and on Instagram, Freelunch Podcast. Hope you've enjoyed.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Picket lines, brother. Picket signs, brother. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on.
What's going on?
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 And we out of here.
Out of here, Free Lunch Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Sorry you gotta pardon me. I'm speaking it awkwardly. Charles Barkley, barking, they ain't biting. I'm getting that green broccoli. Properly giving props to the problem. Fulfill prophecy. It gotta be better than that. It gotta be obsolete. Obviously, niggas rolling the dice and this ain't Monopoly. My purpose was to do it on purpose. Fucking apology. Go.